Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome back to Helen's Ag Academy, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think this is the second or third cohort. I think it's the third cohort. So again, I'm happy to join you again this Thursday. And before we jump into the session today, I want to hear your honest feedback based on our first session. And I want to actually hear, and let me grab my pen. I want you to tell me if there is something in particular you want me to cover. Because when it comes to financial literacy, at times, we only have 3 sessions and there's only so much we could cover. So I want to make sure I do you some justice and also touch as many things that you are requesting me to touch. So can we start? Who wants to start the ball rolling? Key requests. First of all, your perspectives for the last session and then key requests. Everyone's quiet. No, impossible. Am I the only one here? Janelle, let me start calling people. Janelle Brown, hello. You're up. Okay. Bernadine Stapleton. Miss Stapleton? Okay. Let me check the chat. I'm so sorry. I normally have the chat open at the same time. All right. Here we are. I put the chat next to person. Hi, welcome, Janelle. Can you speak or no? Okay, no problem. So let's go to someone else. Angeline Powell. Sheila Francis. Latoya. What happened?
I don't know. I'm hearing you clearly. Ladies, can you hear our facilitator?
Yes, we can. Come now, ladies, come. We're all here together. You see, when it comes to finance and when it comes to talking money, nobody likes to talk. And then we wonder why the men are doing deals and brokering deals every day. Come now. Tell me what you want. Or what is it you really, what your expectations are and what from your perspective from the last session. And then I will share with you what we're going to cover this session. It will be a little bit more hands-on this session. And also I would like to give you a few additional tips and tricks. So tell me. I already had a request from the last session of someone wanting to know exactly how these equity deals are structured. And I'm going to provide you a little more insights on that with a framework that you can use. And after the session, we'll just create one template for you to use. Nobody really? All right then. It's all right.
Okay, good night.
Letitia, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question, right? What would you say is the most important record that we should keep that a lot of businesses or agriculture businesses doesn't keep or doesn't take it serious or take it for granted? What would you advise?
Record? That's a really good question. Most important record. For me, agriculture is heavily data-driven. And first thing and foremost, I can't say there's one most important record. That would be a very challenging question to answer. I would say there are a few key records as an agriculturist, as an agripreneur, you need to keep. So first and foremost, if we're talking about, say, crop production or livestock production, your stock. What are you producing? Is from your inventory right up to the actual final products. You need to have records for all of that. So inclusive of your production, right? Because in this case, you're producing. If you're in agro-processing, it's the same thing. So from a financial lens, obviously your inventory is very important because your inventory is an asset. So that's very important. The other, so apart from your inventory being the asset that helps you turn over, okay? Because primarily you're in a goods business, right? It's not just services. What is also going to be important then are the things that help you produce. So your other assets, meaning your equipment, you should have a full listing of that. You should know exactly what year you bought it. If there's a warranty, how long is the warranty? Why? For those of you in here who are accountants, for those of you who have experience accounting, or you've seen financial statements, so you always wondered, how come in the financial statements they always account for depreciation, okay? It's because, let's be frank, you buy a phone, okay? This phone here has a life cycle, okay? Depending on how you use it, how you produce it, whatever equipment you buy has got a lifespan. It's not forever. And the moment you buy it and you start to use it, the value starts to depreciate in value. So that concept of appreciation and depreciation. You know, when people always say, well, buy a piece of land and over time, land values go up. But for the most part, when it comes to other items, equipment and things, they depreciate. Now, how do we account for it? Or how do accountants account for it? So accountants would always account for it by allocating a depreciation value. So if, when you buy this, let's just say we're delivering, I don't know, mobile delivery through our phone, electronic delivery of our goods, okay? So it's now considered a key asset that helps us make money. And when we bought it, they give you a 3-year warranty, meaning if anything happens in the 3 years, you could change it, exchange it, whatever. And beyond the 3 years, you may have an extra 2 additional years. And based on the type of software coming out and technology keeps on evolving, you have all sorts of new things coming up. The likelihood of it moving past 5 years before you really need to change it is quite high. So in this case, this I would say is short to medium term asset. And what I need to do, because remember, maybe you can extend it by an extra 3 years, because by that time it's going to start to go bad, the battery would die, you have to keep recharging it, you might need a whole new battery. That costs money to replace, to repair. So remember these things, huh? When you have equipment or anything that helps you generate an asset that's asset generating or equipment that helps you generate, and it's machinery, it must be used, and at some point in time it starts to break down. Think of a car. You buy a car brand new, you know you have a good 10 years before you start increasing these mechanic visits for repairs, this and that, something break down. I remember in the region, it's not like we produce cars. You have to import it from wherever to fix it. So that costs money. And the older it is, the more problems you're going to have, more maintenance costs. So sometimes some of us, when we're making financial decisions, we're always looking for low cost. But low cost and quality is something you have to look into, because you might be buying something, you know, that costs you $300 because it's a deal. Okay, so you have to be wary of all these deals and weigh some pros and cons. But you realize that, wow, I got it at a deal, but you create it every month for 3 years. So very simple calculation. Let's say we bought it for $10,000. The lifespan is 3 years. So over the 3 years, you divide it by months. So 12 months in a year times 3, 36 months. And you divide how much the value is, by the amount of months, and then you get how much money you really need to put aside in a special account, right? But do we in practice do it? No, we don't. If you ask half the people who even have the accounting, they account for it, because by accounting standards, this is what a business should be doing, putting something aside so that when it comes to time to do those maintenance costs, those replacement costs, everything, there's now a special account you have allocated for it. For crying out loud, we're still trying to struggle to do our savings and investments. And here we have this additional component. So it is best practice, yes, to put that money aside. You're supposed to account for it. And especially if you're going to invest in some new big machinery, then it is best practice to establish a special account, maybe even a fixed deposit account, so that it can be generating something. So as you're putting in, if you're calculating, you're supposed to put aside 300 EC a month for it, and you can comfortably, whenever you do your sales, put aside that money into that account. Make sure the money is working, because money cannot stay stagnant. And this is why when we talk again about savings versus investment, it's key, because a lot of us will like to save, push it in the bank and just leave it there. And if the bank isn't really, I mean, they're just giving you basic interest rate for what ECB tell them to do, 2%. And we're lucky. In some countries, they have negative interest. So they're getting 0 interest, meaning the money is just sitting in the bank making money off of it, and I'll show you how. But you, the person with the deposit, is just sitting there for safekeeping, as opposed to being under your mattress. But it's not working. Money, it's like energy. It's like water flowing. Think of the river. Think of the ocean. It has to flow, it has to move. Money needs to have momentum. So you have to, just like how we as human beings need to work, need to be productive, need to have tasks and things to do, you have to look at the money as the tool, and that money that you have, that allocation you get, has to be put to work. And this is a way you start thinking your mindset to say, I need to put this to work. So back to what you said, what you asked the question, which important accounts, there's so many, but I think the most important records you would need are your key producing assets, and also those assets that complement and support the producing assets. So those are the 2 key records that you should have. And of course, because we're in the field that we're in, you can't run away from production. You can't run away from the actual inventory and actually producing it. So even write down, if you're doing crop production, the seed is an asset, because that is going to germinate. And you heard the story, sad story last session on Tuesday, when our colleague here had planted, and because of all these issues with the volcanic ash and so on, she didn't get anything. And she explained what she did. You have to do land prep. Sometimes you have to get a backhoe to dig up the place. You have to pay human resources to do clearing, to do this. This is an investment, and you have to, the second thing I want you to write down, you have to also think of yourself as an investor. You are the first investor in the business. So when we finish this program, I want you to walk away seeing yourselves as an investor. And I need you to adopt the investment mindset, because once you adopt an investment mindset, you will have the power to make the right decisions in terms of moving your business forward and growing it forward. It doesn't matter where you are at this stage. Amanda, you say you're hardly hearing. How many people are having difficulty hearing?
I am hardly hearing you too.
LaDonna, you can hear? Let me see what's going on.
Your volume was a bit low from the beginning, and I'm still getting a little low volume from you.
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm going to do something. Sound check. Is it better?
Okay, I'm hearing you now.
Sound check.
Yes, please, I'm hearing.
Oh my goodness. Oh dear. The weather and the connections. All right. So
I think
at
it
any
might
time,
be
stop
an
me. If not, I'll just
sorry, but I think that might be an individual problem. Is anybody else experiencing that? Hello?
I can hear clearly.
Hi.
I can hear clearly also. I think it's an individual problem.
Okay, so you know how it goes with flow and so on and weather. Try. Okay. At least you're hearing. So key takeaway. Investor mindset. Very important. And that is a perspective through which I'm going to be sharing some information with you. So you can look at it from a totally different lens than what you're accustomed to looking at. Okay. So for those who did not hear really quickly, the question, and Letitia, is it Letitia? No, Letitia. I think Letitia. Yes, Letitia Lorraine had asked which would be the most important record for an agripreneur to keep. And I indicated that it's not just one record. At the end of the day, you're in a business where data is king. And as a matter of fact, that comes later. I don't know if we'll be able to look at data models around agriculture, but this industry is rich for people like the Facebooks and so on, because what you have is a lot of information that you can gather from different data points. So obviously, from a purely financial standpoint, I would say assets, and later on, I will show you when we talk about assets and liabilities. From an investor mindset, investors invest in assets. So even if they're saving to accumulate a big pile of money, they deploy that money into an asset. So I said money cannot be stagnant. You can't just drop money here and leave it. You can't just put money in accounts. And we are, unfortunately, St. Vincent is not alone. The whole ECCU, we're focused on savings because this is culturally what we've grown up with. But savings to what purpose? For effects? For carnival? That's when you see the banks rushing to give you a carnival loan for a car. Okay, the mortgage, yes, and I know we love our homes. But outside of that, savings to what end? You can't just be saving and not investing it. At least all of you here have at least a purpose to what you're going to invest in. Because this isn't just a Mickey Mouse thing you're going to do on the side, hopefully. For some of you, yes, for now, it provides you with, something to do, and it could be occupation, but if you take it seriously, it could supplement your income passively. So you need money to invest into this business and invest into different revenue streams and also to diversify. And I'll speak about diversification a little later today, because you can't put everything in one nest egg. You have to break it apart, and that's another aspect of the investor mindset you have to understand. So then, assets for me, number one, would be your inventory. And your inventory, depending on where you are in the production or in the middle, you're selling whatever, it could be the stock, which you buy from someone else, or it could actually be your production, whether it's crop production, livestock, whatever, right? And if you're an agro-processor, obviously the product. That is cash money right there. That's what I will call an asset. It might not be, so here's another two concepts. Liquid and illiquid. You have liquid assets. These are assets that you can easily turn into cash. And you have illiquid assets that you have to go through a little bit to sell, okay? I would say maybe your products are semi-liquid because, if you have a customer and it's food, chances of you actually making a sale is much higher than someone who's creating a brand new product, like a totally new type of device that probably is flying device where you touch your hand, there's some innovation. That is hard to sell because you have to now identify and search for a market. But hey, at the end of the day, it's something we're going to eat or something we're going to rub on our bodies that is made from the food, what God gave us, right? So assets are very important. And then second to that would be the other, I would say you could call it your long-term assets, because there's a concept of short-term, long-term. Your long-term assets, which also help you produce, but they might be more fixed. So things like your land, things like bigger equipment, machinery. We're now in a space where we have to deal with climate risk. So climate smart technologies that you're going to put, water harvesting, solar pumps for your water, etc. These things cost money, but these things will help your production and part of your production costs, right? But they're more long-term and they may cost a lot more. Your greenhouse, if you're doing shade agriculture, or if you're going high-tech into controlled systems with all the technology, bells and whistles, that will cost you for a good 5 acres. If you're going commercial, that's a good $50,000 US right there, right? That money and that value of this thing you have to protect. And if a hurricane comes, whop, the 50,000 gone. Do you have insurance for it? So we'll talk about those things there. So those type of records you have to definitely keep. And then judging from the call we had on Monday, what's the Monday, Tuesday? On Tuesday, we also looked at the whole aspect of little things like soil information. These type of information you get from these things are very key. And now farmers are able to put little sensors, connect them with their phone in order to track and measure these things. because you know, as a farmer, you need to have you need to understand the soil components in order to get the best yield. You need to make sure you have, you know, the right NPK formulation. And we heard last week, because of the volcanic ash, sometimes we don't even need to put that fertilizer. We have too much. So you have to dumb it down with dung and whatever. What is going to give you the information? Data. So if you're able to track it through a little bit of sensor, and these sensors are now very cheap, put it on your phone and you can see. So that becomes a very key record that internally helps you make some decisions. So that's part of what we call precision agriculture, which a lot of people are starting to move into. Okay. So does that answer the question, Natisha? It's not just one record. You have to become a record keeper, a record manager, and a bit more organized. And at some point, well, we can always say it's good to have the great book to write things down. It's also important to start using tools, even if it's a simple Excel sheet. If you don't have Excel, to pay for Excel, you have free software like Google. You can get a free Gmail, and Google provides you with Google Sheets and everything that can help you organize yourself a little better. But again, if you can manage it, you need to find someone, because as the chief cook, bottle washer, and CEO, your job is to find the best people who can help you do certain things so that you can think strategically about the business, because you're the investor. Why you have to do everything? If you know you have someone in your household, or there's some young person around the place that is so great at all these things, hire them and give them a little work to do, you know, to do your data entry, etc. Natisha, to answer your question? Anybody else? Is there something specific? Let me see, what time are we at? So we're going to do this for another 5 to 10 minutes, and then I jump in with some content we have to share. And then we take a little break, and then we continue. Anybody else? Why is everybody quiet today? Is it because it's towards the end of the week? How do you go about accessing grants? Lovely. So I did my homework. I did my digging. And I have put together or curated it was a training we had conducted earlier this year. But we have created a nice little toolkit of how to create a concept note. It might be a concept note for like the Green Climate Fund, which will be a little bit more complicated, but if it's simplified in such a way that if you sort of follow the toolkit, then whenever these opportunities come about, you can at least start to structure a little thing. So just really quickly, answering your question is, it's many different dimensions, and we can have a whole session dedicated to grants, but I'll be very, very specific with a few things you need to know. So within our space, and if you're going to look at what the low-hanging fruits right now, everything is about green, it's about climate finance going to build resilience, going to build adaptation. So let me just give you a few little high-level, should I say, definitions. So when you encounter this, you're not going to pull a blank. That's most important. So number one, we know we have issues with climate change, and sometimes they impact us directly, whether directly or indirectly. So let's talk about the directly, because we're dealing with agriculture and agro-processing businesses, correct? So whether it is already you're seeing the impact of the volcano to our crops, that is a big risk that who would have known Sophia would have popped last year, you know? Who would have known that? Not in a lifetime, we just, you know, take it for granted. But now that we know these things are very real, and we're always having these little disasters. Sometimes we have a little rainfall, and next thing you know, a river break. I remember, where was it? In Bukamal. I think, was it last year, a year before? I mean, we've had our own share of disasters, so no one has to convince you. And if your land happens to be near there, you know everything gone, right? And now, even now, we're thinking, okay, let's try and diversify and do root crops. But now you're hearing, well, with the root crops, you have the issue with the volcanic challenges. So all well and said and done. So now you have opportunities now. So in as much as we have risk and everybody has recognized it, you need to understand that in the area of climate, there is an international, should I say, framework that we can access specific funds for, whether it is in the form of a grant, whether it is in the form of a loan, or even investment equity. These are generally called climate finance, and it's for, you know, wanting to green your business, make it a little more friendly for the environment, at the same time addressing issues for climate. So there's three things you need to understand when it comes to types of climate issues. You need to understand the difference between climate mitigation. Okay, let me write it in the chat so you have it. Number one, climate mitigation. Number two, climate adaptation. They use these big jargon to fool you, but I'll explain. And number three, it's part of adaptation, but climate resilience. So all these countries agreed, many countries signed on. America took long to sign on, but they signed on to what we call the Paris Agreement. And through that Paris Agreement, all these countries who have contributed, because remember, climate, all these climate risks happens because of our actions and happens because of all that industrialization. So all these big factories burning coal and whatever totally destroyed the planet. So obviously, the bigger countries who've been into manufacturing and production are the ones who are to blame. So the way the Paris Agreement would work is these countries, and most of them happen to be developed countries versus the developed. Unlike, I think you have exceptions like China, who you know is the big manufacturer. Everybody, it's the world's manufacturing hub. And you have, to some extent, India, that's in developing countries. But everybody else, they're developed. They've developed, they made their money, they built their empires, and they're still oppressing us. So the agreement is they provide funds so that developing countries, lesser developed countries, and so on, can access these funds to either, and this is a key word, mitigate the climate. So you know when you talk about risks and to mitigate, anytime you hear mitigate, it means you identify a risk and you want to do things to avoid it or reduce its impact. That's the term mitigate. And you have to remember that when we're dealing with climate change, the main issue is rising temperature. And we all felt it this summer. Rising temperature. So the whole thing about the Paris Agreement, which was the first agreement that was first signed, is how can we reduce our temperature below 2 degrees? Because over 2 degrees and up, it's unsustainable for our climate. It means we're going to get hotter, we're going to burn, we're going to die. That's it. So people need to change their behavior and change their processes. That will help slow down the heating. Okay, that's the impact. So anything that does that is called climate mitigation. So obviously things like energy, a lot of renewable energy and so on, fall under mitigation, but here's the spin. For us in the Caribbean, we don't contribute that much carbon emissions to be causing anybody damage. But guess what? We have high energy costs. So for us, a climate mitigation project, we see it as an energy independence and reduction project, right? So those fall under climate mitigation. So you generally will find renewable energy, energy efficiency, even to some extent, you might have like water efficiency going under mitigation. So mitigating the impacts of that temperature rise. So if we think of a cooling project, it falls under mitigation. But if nobody's telling us that, listen, we haven't contributed highly to any of the issues, but you know what? They cough, we catch cold. Something happened, we got cold. A little thing, we have the hurricanes doing all the damage. They're not, it's only now you have even North America is starting to get impacted by the hurricane and so. So because of that, another class says, listen, you can be mitigating as much as you can. It's not reducing the temperature. We have to face the reality, and especially in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we must face the reality that one is going to get hotter. Every year you're going to be dealing with your crops. I mean, this year I saw the coconut. I pour water on the thing and I literally saw the soil bubbling. I said, my God, my roots are cooking. How can this grow? So this is the reality we're facing. So we have to face reality and we have to adapt to this new change. Like, forget it, it's already happened. The school of thought says, forget it, it's happened. How do we adapt to this reality? And in the process of adapting to these new changes, how do we make ourselves more resilient to the impacts? You see what I'm saying? Does everybody understand now the concepts? Mitigation, adaptation, resilience? So if I plant coconut shrubs, I'm making my land more resilient because it won't have that soil erosion, soil slips. Yeah. And you're wondering, why are we talking about this? You're supposed to be talking about finance. You can't talk about finance unless you know what the hell to finance. And that is the problem with climate finance. They keep saying there are no projects or projects are not being developed. So when you ask the good question, how do I find a grant? You first have to understand your project. And the big problem we have in our region is we don't have a pipeline of projects that are well designed, that can clearly give the story as to why, what is happening, and you're on the ground. So you can see for yourself what is actually happening. Document that, because listen, on a phone, we're good, we chat. We love to tell a good story. Can we not write that good story and put it on paper and say, this is what is really happening to my plant stem? And because of that, I need X, Y, Z to help make me more resilient, make my business stronger, adapt to this new reality. I can't go further. Shafika? Yeah, the question.
No, I don't.
Okay. Anybody have a question? Natalie say yes. Natisha say yes. How do I make money work? Okay.
So,
So,
then, right?
yeah, go ahead, Natisha.
So it's something like the irrigation system that would be part of the plan because
What
of the
system?
heat that would be expected. That would be a good one to put
What system?
with the client, the irrigation system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you start realizing you need these things, obviously now, because of these changes, what happens? There are things we can do to make you more resilient, make you stronger, help you adapt to this new change. But guess what? It requires a big investment because it's not cheap. Whether it is investment in your education, investment in the actual technology, you know, the tools, the new way of working, maybe changing your entire business model, it requires investment. And this is where it opens. And as much as you can say, okay, this is really a risk, it is also an opportunity because also within this space, it means there's some new opportunities that you can find to offer a new service, a new kind of product to people that would help them become more resilient. So it's an opportunity. It also helps you unlock climate finance. So now when you are now looking or you're faced with one of these proposals that asks about sustainability, if it talks about sustainability, you're thinking about from a business standpoint, how do you make yourself sustainable? And also, how do you make yourself more green, more adaptable to these new dimensions, a green business model? And before the night is out, I'll share with you a green business model toolkit. I'll share with you also it's a toolkit for writing a concept note, okay? And these are some materials we had produced from our program I can share with you. And then we can, over time, because the chat, I suppose, is going to be quite active, we can find from time to time some additional resources to share with you as we go along. But you shouldn't be afraid when you see these proposals and say, oh, you know, this is what we do. We see lots of paper. They're asking, every donor has different questions. And to be honest, sometimes it looks like Greek. So if you don't know, ask somebody. There are resources in St. Vincent, you know. You have is it NDF, you have CD, you even have individuals you can go to ask a question. Can you help me decrypt what they're saying? Because they're using big language, right? But don't be afraid. Even when you're filling out a form, you know, sometimes if you're doing Caribbean export, they might ask you for information about your business, financials, and whatever. Some people pause and say, wait, there's too much information. What do you have to lose? Put it in there. And sometimes the information is not to, you know, some people think, okay, well, I may not pass, you know, because I only just made this year, I only just made like $5,000. So I don't think I'll make it. Sometimes they're just looking for the information to know who is in the market, because you don't know how to fashion a program unless you know exactly. Hello. You know exactly. You're distracting my class, you know. Yeah, you know exactly what is in the market. And unfortunately, when the region, we don't have data. We don't have data on women in business. It's only recently they started capturing data on women in business. So you shouldn't get intimidated when you see forms. Fill it out. Actually, I have entrepreneurs now tell me they have a little folder where they did one form before, so they keep it somewhere. So whenever they ask for the information, they have it right there to submit, right? So you have to get into that habit of getting yourself ready for that. So those concepts you need to understand. So when you're navigating this world of grants, especially in the field of agriculture, and they have these buzzwords, you're not like wondering what they're talking about. You already know what it is to expect. And the last thing, a lot of these programs, because of these Paris agreements that was established, and the fact that it's in law, and nationally, every country has like a commitment called the nationally contributed determinants. It's a big word, NDC. Every country has it. St. Vincent has it, meaning every country makes a commitment of how they're going to reduce the impacts of climate change through mitigation and also adaptation. They set out the adaptation goals, whether it's land use management, agriculture, and so on. It's like a goal. We're going to try and reduce our energy by 60%. We're going to try. So you should go seek out what our national program is about, right? Because sometimes you're minding your business, you're doing your business. Sometimes all these things with the policymakers just skim your head, but they become important when you want to attract these things, because they always ask a question, whether directly or indirectly. Is this in line with your national priority? So something on Tuesday, notice Joylyn shared that information with the report from the Ministry of Agriculture. You need to have that as an entrepreneur. You need to know what the plans the government are doing, so that anytime you get an opportunity, you say, well, here the ministry is planning, this is what they plan to do, this and this. They have committed to do this and this and this. So my proposal falls in line with this big, broad plan. And sometimes that is all the donors want to see. That is your project in line with the national priority. So that's one thing you have to think about. So we talked about climate mitigation, resilience, and adaptation. We talked about national priorities. The fifth thing now is what we call environmental safeguards and social safeguards. Fancy word, I break it down for you. So we talked a bit of the environment, because when you talk about climate, whatever, it's all about the environment. So I think we have addressed those measures you're going to put in place to either adapt, mitigate, or be resilient. That can fall under environmental safeguards. So whenever you see the big word environmental safeguards, you can see and say, okay, yeah, I did this based on the climate issues, environmental issues, things like, if we're doing fertilizer, things like residual, what do you call them, MRL? What's the term? Something residual thing about your fertilizer, not having too much fertilizer. When you're doing your health, did you do your health session already?
Yes, we did.
You did nutritional marketing?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so I'm sure it was covered about, using less pesticides and so on. So that component can also consist of part of that environmental safeguard. And if you are contributing to the environment or damaging the environment, very simple. When it comes to social, it now is us and our livelihoods. And as women and us being in agriculture, you're one-to-one with the society, with the community, right? How are you impacting your community? Well, yes, you impact your immediate household, but as your business is growing, how is your business going to be contributing to the community or not? And remember, I mentioned, if you have a little bit of, if you're the kind of person that likes to give a lot, you may be thinking of maybe more social entrepreneurship, where you have a model where a component has a giving component to the community, and then you can just describe it under that heading. So some of us, because they use all these fancy words, we don't even know what they mean by that. So it means how we in society, how's your business contributing to positively to the society in a social manner? And then of course, what we're doing here, gender. Gender is a big topic. And most of these donors, when they say gender, they mean women. Gender equality, gender equity, empowering women. So what Ag Academy is doing right now fits within that social safeguard and safety net. So when you're doing your own project, you can also think about, okay, how many women, so you yourself, you're the founder. Apart from being the founder, a woman-led business, how many women you have in your business, how many women you're going to be empowering, and so on and so forth. That's what they mean. And then, of course, not necessarily most donors identify it, but I know for us in the OECS, we always look at youth. So think, when you think social, think community, think gender, think youth, and think those people who are differently abled, you know, those people are hard of hearing or so on. How is your business plan or your model impacting these people? Very key, right? And when you see these projects, you just have to write in the section or ask the question, you now describe it. So hopefully, the little nuggets I have shared with you here would at least empower you to, when you see you get these opportunities, you don't freeze up and wonder what they're really trying to say here, because a lot that happens to all of us. It happens to me too. There's some forms I still see to today, new ones, that it takes me 2 weeks to decipher what really going on. So you don't need to get frazzled with these big words, but just understand it so that you're empowered to be able to apply to these things. Okay? So how do I make my money work for me? Very good. We're going to touch that on the break. So I see it is 7:06. So let's take a 10-minute break. Okay. And then when we come back on the 10-minute break, we will now focus a little bit on the personal financial statement, consolidate our concepts with what we're talking about with assets, liabilities, etc. And then I want to jump into business model engineering and how it links to your business. Because at the end of the day, you can look at spreadsheets from now till tomorrow. If the business isn't working, your financials not going to work. So we got to look at the business. We got to look at the model before we now go back down to see how we can document it properly, at least from a logical standpoint, and make the type of critical decisions. Okay. So it's 19:07, so let us resume. That's 17 past. Okay. That works. Toya, I'm going to hop off for 5 minutes. I'll jump back in.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Thank you. Next time we need to prepare with some music for the break. Okay, back from our little break. How are we? How's everyone? Let me share my screen. So did what I share resonate with anyone? And someone was asking, how do I make my money work? That's on the investment side. Oh, and we're up to 26. Good evening, ladies. Welcome. Okay. Let's get into sharing my slide. Oh, I think I have it on the older version. Okay. I think Keithlin would change the branding a little bit. So did what I share resonate? Ladies? Everyone is quiet today, like y'all doing something. Hmm? Sometimes I need feedback, you know. I'm not perfect. And I can only give you what you want. So think of this as your non-conventional class. Yes, there might be some structured elements to it, but at the same time, because it's financial literacy, we can be a little bit more flexible and answer things that people currently want and need. Okay. So I'm going to go through today a little bit on the personal financial statements, because you're wondering, how do you document everything into the money? Okay. And then we'll talk a bit about cash flow. Again, looking at assets, liabilities, and also we can have that conversation how you can put your money to work. As I said, just remember, money must never, ever be stagnant. The same way as a human being, you get up every morning, you either go to work on a day job, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, and you have tasks doing something, or you're working your side hustle, you know, when you come back, or you're full-time entrepreneur from 8 to 8 a.m. again, 24/7, we're putting ourselves to work. So why can't the money be put to work? And this is the key difference between, you know, they have a saying between a rich person and a poor person, not all the time, but basically the wealthy families tend to have what I call a playbook that they follow. That is key for building generational wealth. They don't just think about, okay, I want money, I'm going to enjoy, I'm going to splurge, this and that. Lifestyle. They have a lifestyle, but you have to figure out what they had to do to actually get to that lifestyle. Why? Because their assets are working for them to pay for the lifestyle. The same way your business is going to be one of those assets. Now, mind you, I say one of the assets because in as much as you have this, there's some diversification strategies you have to have in order to start building your nest egg. And don't think that you have to have millions to be able to achieve that, because there's the power of compounding and leverage, which we can discuss. So at the end of the day, money flows into your life. Money leaves your life. Money flows into your business. Money leaves your business. When it comes in to your life, to you, it could come in the form of a wage, a salary, income. When it's your business, it comes in as revenue. But just because, let's say you have watermelon, you have, say, watermelon, pumpkin, and some dashing. 1,000 pounds of watermelon, 500 pounds of pumpkin, and then you have maybe 6,000 pounds of dashing in your ad. Wow. And why I say wow? Because what I mentioned has value. There's a market for it. It might not be totally liquid, but if you go and hustle a little bit, you can turn this into cash quite quickly. So it's semi-liquid. So therefore, I can list your inventory and stock as an asset, right? That can help you generate the income. So just because you're generating, let's just say somebody came, a new hotel's opening up, and they want to buy all your watermelon and all your dasheen because you have a new chef doing some celebrity chef story. And of course, you're selling it for $5 thing. So I don't have to go into the units for you. You calculate it. That's some really good dough. What do some of us do? Key question. Funds come in. So if, let's just say we're selling at $5 a pound and you have 200,000 pounds. How much is that, please? Someone with a calculator. Let's calculate it. Let's start getting some numbers in the room. 5 EC, 200,000 pounds. That's $1 million right there. 1 million EC, ladies. 1 million EC. So you make $1 million EC. You get a check. You get a wire. Bragadam. You start getting so excited. You got money. And you start spending it right, left, and center. Oh my God, overnight you're a millionaire. You've gone on vacation, this, that, that. But mind you, you had expenses that maybe you forgot to pay. You had maybe some direct costs that you had to take out. So always remember your income or your revenue is not profit. You have to, when you get your revenue, you take out whatever direct expenses you have, whatever indirect expenses. And notice I'm using those words very key, because some women will complain to me about these financial statements just don't make sense. But I said it's because no one has broken down the concepts for you. So when you look at it, it looks like Greek, you know, but it's simple. Whatever comes in, you need to account for it. Whatever goes out, we either go out one or the other way, as an expense or as a liability. What if you had a mortgage? What if you had a loan? And here's the nice part about it. So I want you to visualize, because knowing, then when you start seeing it on paper, you start to understand. If you have a loan, it means you're owing the bank or the credit union or whoever. And for them, whatever it is, it's an asset, because they charge you principal, which is the original amount. So say you for doing this business, you needed to take a $50,000 loan, 50,000. And maybe they told you the interest is going to be 8% per year, and they probably give you 10 years to pay it off. Okay. So if we do direct, just do a simple 8%, just direct without doing fanciness. So 8% per year, that amounts to 4,000 you have to pay the bank every year. Okay. Interest. That doesn't say anything about the original 50,000. That's where some of us go wrong. So sometimes, and the bank isn't really interested in you. Some banks are direct and transparent. Some banks are not. Some banks will charge you interest only and never talk about the original amount. So when you're not checking, because these financial things are just too much. All you know is the bank sends you an invoice or whatever you need to pay, and you go and put money on it without instructing the bank what to do. This is where the financial literacy comes in. Because from a bank's perspective, think about it. If you are the bank, say someone is going to give Anisha a loan, you're giving Anisha a loan for 50,000, and you're going to charge her 8% interest, meaning 4,000 every year for 10 years. That's an additional 40,000 on top of the 50,000. So in total, she gonna owe you 100,000. And if she late, you probably tack on some fees of extra percentages, so it will go up. At the end of the day, you're not really too interested in her paying off the principal, you know, because you're making money off the interest. Interest is your money. So when you are sending her reminders, you always send her invoice for the interest, which is part of 4,000 every month. She has to put money towards that 4,000. So she paying for 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, she said, I'm ready to get rid of this loan. And you're like, say what? You still got 50,000 to pay enough. So that's another 10 years. And then perhaps they have to restructure something and then tack on some other fees. So that's how people get caught in that trap. So when you get a loan, you always want to know what the principal is and what the interest is and how they calculate it. And you want to see the schedule so that whenever you're making a payment, you can say, I'm paying maybe 300 EC. I want 250 to go towards the interest and 150 to go towards my principal. So you're paying it down at the same time.
Tammy,
Yeah?
excuse me.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're talking about that, right? Because I read somewhere recently that they were saying that it's good to like you can go into the bank and tell them that you only want to pay the principal, and that's supposed to, like, I don't know, carry down the sum a bit or something like that. Is it true?
Yes, but you have to look at the loan agreement very carefully. Maybe the first year or so, the bank might want to make sure that they have at least some interest, percentage of that interest paid on top before they start. You can now put more on top of the principal. Or like some people might decide, you know how it is. You might know you have a little loan here, you have to pay 120 EC, so you pay it. And then when you have a little extra, you've sold some goods and you can now put a 3,000 to down pay it. When you're making that down payment, then you can now put a request to put it on top of your principal as opposed to the interest, because the bank is just going to put it to the interest. So you have to be, what I'm trying to say, you have to be on top of it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Because the bank is only going to look after itself. The job is to make money. And it's making money two ways. Not only have they given you the interest, are they making money from the interest? Remember, they're putting their money to work, okay? They're putting the money to work. They gave you 50,000 and you're paying this interest. So the money is working all the time for them, no problem. The money is working. But the bank also, because you have the deposit in the bank, there is, so the way banks fund themselves, generally speaking, with the central bank, they have like an account with the central bank, and whatever deposits they have, the central bank, most central banks might give them 10 times the value of the deposit. So if you have 20,000 in the bank, a central bank might give them a 10 times that amount. And they will use that to loan money and make money. So that is the bank's business model. So how can you think about that and emulate that into your business? So that's something to think about. But yeah, so you have your income statement, or it's also called a profit and loss statement. Here's one sheet that just captures income and expenses. So it doesn't matter if it's a personal financial statement for your personal stuff, and in your manual, at the last page, you're gonna see a personal financial statement, which for homework, I want you to fill it out, or at least try to, because a lot of us don't ever document anything and have surprises. Sometimes people say, yeah, I budget all the time, but sometimes it's good to do it like on a monthly basis and annually, because it tells you some truths. It's not just, it's a very therapeutic thing, and it could be rough, because let's just say you haven't not necessarily been focusing on assets. It's going to give you the true picture of what your net worth is, and give you an idea of, okay, these are areas you need to work on. You need to build more assets, right? Grow more assets, because eventually assets are the ones working for you that will give you money. So that's key. So here we have two types of statements: the income statement, or otherwise we also call it profit and loss statement, because you either have a profit or a loss. And then you have, of course, the balance sheet, which is tacked onto that. So on a personal side, it's very simple. Say assume you're not having a business, you're getting a salary comes in. You know how we do our monthly budgeting and so on. You do your budget, you know what your expenses are. Whether it's if you have a mortgage, part of your expense monthly is going to be the interest. That's why on financial spreadsheets, you wonder, hang on, how come my principal isn't part of my expense? They don't really care about the principal. What you're owing the bank is really the interest. So the interest is listed on that line of expenses, and then your principal comes further down in your overall long-term expenses. So this is why, because the bank wants to be paid first. They couldn't really care what happens to you and your principal. The bank wants to be paid first. So just remember that. Things that we take for, we don't think about: communication, flow, and digital, and how much top up we use. Yes, people tell me, yeah, I do this. I probably don't, but are we actually capturing how much it is? Are you putting yourself on a plan so that you can manage that cost and not just doing every minute, 5 minute top up? Before you know it, you spend 300 EC, right? And then have you put aside things for maintenance and so on. So that's basically income expenses. And when it comes into your financial statement, you then see it very clearly. And in your financial statement, remember, we have the income, we have what we call cost of goods sold, which is your direct expenses, or what we call gross margin. It's really called your direct costs. So let's say in your crop production, you have a little nursery component to your business model. So you have to first take the seedling to the nursery, and then take the seedlings, and then you plant. So you have costs. Who's bearing the cost for land prep and all of that, and the seedlings, before you have your overhead costs with, like, salaries and this and that and that. So like what she was talking about, the back one, so some of these are direct costs that you have to pay, that are directly linked to your output. And then you have your other overheads, your electricity, if it is you're paying rent, or the other mortgage expense, the principal, all of that come under the much larger expenses. That's why they call it fixed expenses and variable. You have electricity, water, these can be variable depending on where you are. And especially now, CWC, that bill's gone up. You're using a lot of water in your production. Are you getting it subsidized or whatever? That goes up. So understand those. So don't be afraid when you're looking at financial statement. And later, let's see, we have time today? I wonder. I might just have time to show a statement. A full statement, okay? Then the balance sheet is important. Assets equals liability. So if you don't have an asset is very simple. What makes money for you is an asset. What takes money away from you is a liability. And let's have the conversation. Is your house an asset or a liability? Question time. Yes, Alberta, these are things we're not taught at all. Yes, Natalie.
Depends. If your
I
house
I
is
don't
making
think
money,
go ahead.
if the house is making money for you, it will be an asset. But if the house is like there, right there is a liability. It's not bringing in money for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Any other person? What do you think of that perspective? Because you know, we've intentions, we really love our homes and our mortgage. And the banks love us. Why? Oh, you talk to a banker, they say, oh, I remember talking to it's a bank at St. Vincent, and Derry telling me, oh, you know, in St. Vincent, we have no worries, you know, because our portfolio, we have a big portfolio. When I was looking at their portfolio for mortgages, it's huge. I said, well, as a bank, you would want to have so much in one component. He said, well, you know, our people, and it's true, Vincentian love their homes. So they will religiously pay their mortgage. And so the bank is very happy because its balance sheet looking good. Because no matter come rain or shine, we're paying the mortgage. Now, if you go over to Antigua or Barbados, it's a very different story because, again, you have that different cultural components with what people value, etc. But in essence, unless you have extra units in your house that are either generating for your business or you're doing a little rental thing and it's generating income for you, it's a glorified liability. And sometimes we have to have that liability to live. So we're not saying it's evil, it's bad, but you just have to be made aware that it could keep you down. And therefore you have to find some sort of balance. There are things sometimes you have to do it. So it's nowhere. So when you have that, you have to make the decision, okay, let me look at my assets, my asset column. How can I increase this column that's generating money for me, right? And that comes to, if you look at the manual that you got, I listed different types of income. So you have, of course, your personal, your salary, wages as your fixed income coming in, but you also have what you call portfolio income. So you have business income, which could be seen as passive, even though really and truly, you're an agriculture business, there's nothing passive about it. You're working hard, you're doing the grind. So it's called passive, but technically not. Portfolio income. And let me talk a little bit about portfolio income. Let's take 5 minutes about that because that's linked to investments. So yesterday, Tuesday, we talked about different types of investments. We talked about equity, okay? We even talked about revenue-based finance, which is like a cross between a loan and equity, but it gives you control because you're not giving ownership, but it's almost like a partnership in a way. Now, when you're thinking about equity, you have to look at what we have in our ecosystem. And what we do have here is the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. How many people are familiar with ECSE? Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. Ladies?
I've heard of it.
Heard.
I've heard of it, know it's available, but don't know too much about it.
Uh-huh. Yes, Phyllis said it could be an asset if you're using it as collateral. Okay, yes, you're right. Very good. Okay, so you've heard about it, ECSE, okay. Well, so companies are at different stages. And of course, in the Caribbean, we just generally don't have. We're still, should I say, young in looking at entrepreneurship and the different stages of business, but businesses have different stages. In some cases, I tell people, well, in our region, you can have a small business forever because we tout small business. And in one respect, it's okay, but in another respect, when you're called a small business, there's no aspiration to do anything. So businesses have different levels of growth stages, and generally speaking, as they grow, and let's talk about it within our context, okay, St. Vincent and Grenadines. And people might not like this topic, so I'll try and be a little bit more sensitive. We all know our history, okay, with slavery and whatnot. We know that the plantocracy, and I'm using the words to try and be more diplomatically correct, those former planters that owned all the lands and assets that were involved in that type of enterprise, because think of it as a business, it was a business, huh? Human capital. Decided, okay, they're moving out there because of prohibition. They move out of that, they're going into our historical agriculture. Whether they started with cotton, going into sugar, eventually into banana. And when we do our Caribbean history, they tell us of all the type of cycles. As we know, business cycles happen. It happened then and it's still happening now. You're always gonna have ups and downs in business. That's why it's always a cycle. Very dynamic. So obviously in them transitioning from one type of enterprise that was now made illegal into another type of enterprise, and them now trying to use cheap labor, free labor into cheap labor, etc., and the indentured servants, etc., had their own business cycles they had to encounter, and had to encounter globalization too, because someone will go to India that has more land space, more economy, what we call economies of scale, and get things done cheaper. Okay, so this is why they're always looking for cheap labor. So this is the agriculture history that we have about. So as they evolved and they came out to all these things, they obviously came with their wealth and now established all these buy-sell commercial enterprises we have here today. So if you want to put it on the context, they may not necessarily have had the experience of starting as a small business, struggling and thing. In some cases, some had that history, but in others, they already had some kind of wealth they were able to use to get into the business. And hence we have what we have now, supermarkets, all these car companies and so on, offering services. So these companies, like the Giddy's Grant, Korea's mother company in Barbados, they're established now, big. They own all these assets. Their asset pool is like huge. They've been able to diversify their services. Again, they built up their asset portfolios that has now started generating for them. God bless them, great for them. And in some cases, they're big enough that they're able to now go to the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange and list and become a public company. So before becoming public, you know, you and I have our little company, we're private. But when you get to a certain stage of growth, you now can list and become a public company where you can offer shares to the public. But of course, it means that your processes, you have to follow specific rules, you have to have your processes, everybody can look at your books, everything is public. So in the ECSC, you have that opportunity to buy into shares. And I mean, I did talk about that history, but it's not only that. You have, like, for instance, you have banks that have grown in size, they have got very good management and so on. They decide to become public companies. They can now list on this securities exchange here and offer shares, right? And now we have talked about our region. I'm sure you're very familiar with things like Apple and Google and people talking about the stock market and buying shares. It's the same concept. Companies have grown up, or even some companies that are startup grow fast because they got large customers and they grow in size, they get big investments and they aspire to become bigger public companies, because when you're there, you sell your shares and people buy them up. So you don't have issues about liquidity and cash flow, no, because it's always coming, people buying in shares. So when people buy shares, obviously there's a form of ownership that happens there. So it is an opportunity, obviously, if you're diversifying your assets and you're looking at portfolio income, is to look for, you can say, shares that provide you dividends. So you have to look around the market. Obviously, you do your due diligence in the company, maybe attend some of their annual meetings and get to understand if there's someone who is in the country. I think in St. Vincent we have, is it Caribbean Money Brokers or something like that? Caribbean Money Associates. I'll look for the name. But they also sell shares, and even like Bank of St. Vincent, I think you can go to for advice on how to participate in the ECSC. And then of course the other platforms that allow you to participate, but you don't blindly put your money in things that aren't pretty sure, because you know how business is. You're running your business, you know, today something happened, you could lose everything. So you want to not say, ooh, Apple is growing so fast, I'm going to take all my money. You're working so hard, you probably saved for 5-6 years, you have 50,000 EC saved up, and you're going to now buy Apple shares, and then something happens, whoop, you lose all your money. So the key thing with investments is diversification. It's like having a nest egg, but you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You separate it in this. So investment is like that. That's why in the world of investments, you have, they describe them as different asset classes. And as you develop and you get more acquainted with the different type of asset classes, you yourself would have some preferences for certain asset classes. So the one asset class I did speak about is equity as an asset, and specifically looking at dividend income, because sometimes you can put money in a private company and maybe in 5 years you may get a return, or they may sell to someone else and you may get something. Or you look for a more seasoned, mature company that's been in the market for many years. If you look at the ECSC, I think they only have maybe 12 or 13 companies, a few banks, I think Lucilec, not Vinlec, Lucilec in St. Lucia is there, a few other things, but they are producing and they're giving some very good dividends, like 5-6%, more than what you would get in a bank. So that's one option, and that's one asset class. that you can think about equity, dividend income as a side. Another good one is on the ECFC. They have government securities. So me personally, and this is an investment advice, me personally, I tend to look, because you have to look at your own investment behavior and your pocket and what you can tolerate. And in my business, I'm an innovator, so I'm a risk taker. But when it comes to my money, I'm a bit more conservative. So you have to, some people are different like that. I do want to invest, but I don't want to put all the risk in it. So obviously, I know my profile, and I think I can share with you a link so that you can have an idea of what so you say your investment profile could be. Hello, we're having class, we're almost done. Seems done. Okay. So what did I want to say that you disturbed me? Yes, so another asset class. So government securities. Governments too can literally run almost like a business. The same way as an individual, you generate income, you exchange your time for money, you get income, you have expenses, and you can either acquire assets or you can acquire debt and get liabilities. Very simple. A business is the same thing. You generate revenue, you have expenses, you can build more assets to help you generate more of that revenue, or you can get debt. And debt isn't bad if you know how to use it, right? Generally speaking. Government is the same thing. How do you think government get money? It's not only taxing us to bits. No. Governments use the securities exchange to raise money from the public. So what the governments tend to do, if a private company does it on the exchange in a very big way, they might issue what we call a bond, right? And a bond can give you what we call fixed income. So a bond is debt. If it's not equity that you're not owning, but it is almost like a form of a loan, then it could be a bond, and that would give you fixed income every month. So it's like you acting as the bank. If you are acting as the bank, giving them a loan, and then you're getting a return, your interest on it, a dividend, that is called a debt instrument and a debt asset class. And they have many different types. Now, if a government is raising money, they can either raise money in form of a bond. So it's debt, again, like a big fat loan. So they want to raise 15 million. But remember, how many of us in the ECCU? We're quite a lot. And banks would buy, other institutions would buy, then a few individuals would buy as well. So before you know it, it's almost like crowdfunding. The crowd, when you have a pool, you know how quickly that pool fills up, and next thing, that 18 million is already covered. So governments still do that. They issue short-term debt and long-term debt. Short-term debt is done in the form of treasury bills, okay? T-bills for short, let me write it, T-bills. And these are very short, 30 days, 60 days, sometimes 90 days. I've seen something like 150 days and so on. So me, that's my preference, because I see they might be selling these treasury bills, and maybe each treasury bill might be giving you a return of something like 4%, 3%. That's way more than me putting it in the bank. So imagine if I have a strategy where I would have done my savings, mind you. So this is why I say you don't eliminate savings. Still need to save. But when you've pulled up your nest egg, there's certain things you can do to multiply it so you have more to put to work. So always looking for what to put to work. So say you've had 20,000 save up, okay? Assuming, okay, say it's 50,000 and you're gonna take, like I said, don't put everything in thing. You're gonna take like 20% of it or whatever. You're going to buy treasury bills for say 60 days. It means that after 60 days, if the treasury bill says paying 4%, it means you're going to earn 4% interest on whatever you bought. So if you took up 20,000 and you're getting 4% interest in 60 days, and you're getting your money back promptly with your principal back in 60 days, haven't you grown your pot? And haven't you put your money to work? And imagine if you cycle it 4 times a year. At 4%, that's 16% per annum. And your money is starting to grow and accumulate and multiply. And you're not taking it to go spring. You're probably loading it up to then accumulate again. So that eventually you say, oh, I've made what, 10% this year, 5% this year. I can now have this pay for my vacation, this pay for my car and this pay for my car, or contribute towards my mortgage, which is a liability. So I like T-bills for that. And another reason I like T-bills is because, you know, governments also get broke and governments could default, just like you and I could default on a loan. So for me, I like to manage my risk and mitigate my risk. If I'm taking a 30, 60, 90 day, I know, okay, government will collapse in like that space of time. But I have to know the risks. This is an investment, and you have to know what you're doing. Now, the other thing is bonds. Government will also offer bonds, and bonds tend to be longer, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and they offer maybe over time. And this is for long-term income. So sometimes you're wanting not to risk everything. Like I say, you don't want to diversify. You want to diversify and not put everything in your basket. So you're putting a little 5% into something like a bond product that's going to pay continuous dividends for maybe 10 years or 5 years, whatever. The only thing is, bear in mind the cycles and things that are happening around us, climate change, this and that. Remember what happened with Dominica, remember what happened with Grenada. So if something were to happen that will pause these payments, would you be worse off or not? This is where your risk tolerance comes in, and this is where you have to do risk management to know exactly where to put what, so you're not overly burdened. Okay. So who was it that asked how you put your money to work? So I just spoke about 3 asset classes, right? I talk about equity and different types of equity, like fixed dividend income. And then I also talked about bonds, which bonds can provide you what we call fixed income. And the same can happen not just in the Eastern Caribbean in our market, it can also happen in the capital market, because they have some solutions like Robinhood and so on. You can sign up and you can access and own shares like Apple and so on that are paying some very good dividends. So for some people, at the end of the year, it pays in. I know like National Bank here in St. Kitts and Nevis, they always pay a dividend every year, but you know, just after COVID, I don't think in the last year they had a dividend, but it generally does come in handy as even extra Christmas bonus, right? Does that answer some questions? But you know, your stock market isn't the only place you can go and do that. These days, you have newer technologies. with crowdfunding. I don't know if in St. Vincent we have that opportunity where you have what you call a peer-to-peer marketplace. I know here in St. Kitts, and I do know some persons in St. Vincent actually participate in the one in St. Kitts, where you and I are pretty much acting like a bank and giving people loans and so on. So for me, I benefit from it. I've taken some money, invested it in certain projects. I see the project coming up, I bid for it, and you'll be surprised, you know, some people willing to pay a good 18% interest for a little loan for 6 months and so, and you're making your money grow. But just bear in mind, you're gonna have the same things happening if it's debt. Some people run into trouble, can't pay. So you have to, again, diversify whatever you're doing. So this, we can talk about assets all day because I haven't even touched alternative assets, but at least there's real estate, of course, and a lot of you are into real estate. So you can even look at what are some of the alternative assets and investments you can invest in. Under alternatives, especially those in agriculture, some people just love to stick in your own lane, which I agree with. So if you're comfortable with land, you're comfortable with real estate, comfortable with agricultural land, you'll always gravitate towards opportunities in investment in the agri space that can help you diversify. I've seen an opportunity where you can still be running your own business, but still be investing somewhere else that has greenhouses and these containerized things, and are generating some kind of returns as well. Institutions, yes. I know I think the Caribbean money market is in St. Vincent that you can reach out to, and they can give you advice. I would double check, but I think Bank of St. Vincent also has an investment deck. So for the region, internationally, you have to see. Again, there's some places where it's really all about education and just getting acquainted with some. So yes, I can share some resources, a resource list of where you can go to understand better about alternative investments and these type of asset classes. I know in the US too, because their capital market, you know, is much more mature than even ours, they have other products like REITs. Has anyone heard of a REIT? I'm mindful of the time, but spare me. Have you heard of a REIT? And these are some models one can even emulate, even locally, okay? So real estate investment trust. So essentially it is almost like a fund. So you have funds and real estate investment fund. So it's a fund that is established to own and buy real estate. And what they do, at least if you're in America or you're visiting, you notice that they have a lot of these commercial real estate places offering residential stuff. A lot of them are not owned by individuals anymore. No, they put everything into a collective fund, okay? So let's say it's a company that's set up for everybody, basically. It's set up and the company owns everything, and then they divide up the shares of the trust where everybody can then contribute and make their contributions and getting their dividend, like a fixed income coming back from it. And then then they have a management team that is under this REIT structure, like company, and its sole focus is collecting investment, and they will probably hire another company to run the real estate. So you're finding now that a lot of the bigger real estate people are starting to do that. And even I'm seeing a lot of farming, agriculture REITs that are doing very well, where people now collectively owning plots of land collectively as a collective. So imagine if all of us here decide to put our hands together, set up one big entity, company, as like a fund, and then allocate all the land inside it, and that company owns it. And then you put a very strong management structure with a team, staff, everything. And maybe you can hire, that staff will now hire professional farmers and so on to run the land and do everything, generate revenue for you. And all you do is sit back, because whatever you contributed in there might probably, let's just say, as an owner, you get maybe 10% of shares, right? So if the whole collective generates, say, 10 million, and by virtue of your shares, you probably get 10% of that, you know? So it can be a very lucrative thing. So in structures like that, individuals who then put capital in there, they're called limited partners, right? You're an investor, but you're a limited partner. And the same goes for a fund. The fund works the same way. So in the United States and in these capital markets, sometimes you can find, again, a REIT. In essence, at the bottom of the REIT is just like a company. And like any other company, you can have a private company. And if it is listed on the exchange, it can be public. So you do have public REITs that have all their documents published. They've gone through rigorous governance and they have to like present everything. And some of these REITs can provide you a dividend income, but you have to look to see which one, because sometimes no two REIT is the same. Like no two equity is the same. You need to look for one that is giving you dividend. Well, for me personally, okay, I like to get some money back to grow my little nest egg. So I'm not that rich enough to sit down waiting 10 years to get a big payout. No, I want to be able to afford things and have the assets I'm buying in my portfolio income pay for my lifestyle, pay for my holiday trips, and what have you, right? So this is what I wanted to share in terms of understanding that under alternatives, you have many different types of asset classes. You can either invest in real estate directly, whether you setting up something in your house or building your own little thing for the university students who are coming in the med school, or if you're not into that and the construction and this, you can become a passive investor. When I say passive, meaning you're using one of these structures to generate a fixed income or a dividend with your passive income. So again, when you look at that list, you can have many incomes. Personal income coming in from your 9 to 5. You have your revenue from this business. You're probably offering some kind of teaching class in the weekend. You know how us women, I remember having many different revenue streams. You have a little lesson going here. You're selling this over here. And then your main little business is generating this. And you're getting rental income. Remember? You as the investor, you could be getting direct rental income if you have, say, apartments or something, you're renting out a unit, even renting out a machine, okay? Maybe you have invested in a land, a backhoe, and so you are running a service for other entities to do the clearing. So you could be getting that kind of income, but I want you to start thinking about how you yourself in your model can actually diversify your asset base in order for it to generate. Okay, does that answer that question? And are these concepts now very comfortable? One second. Okay. Remember, we're coming close to Christmas and Carnival here. December is Christmas and Carnival, yes. So in St. Kitts, so it's gonna get noisier. So the floor is yours. I want to hear from people because I know I've taken up your time.
Hi, good night. Yes,
night.
I do find it very interesting what you just said, and it's very thought-provoking. I start thinking about other areas where I can invest, etc., and where I can get some income. One thing I would like you to do for us, please, for maybe next class, if you can bring some financial statements for agricultural businesses, so we can see how they're set up, laid
Okay,
out.
financial statements. Perfect. Yeah. Anybody else? Motivation, Phyllis? Only motivation? Which Phyllis is that? Is my Phyllis?
Tell me,
Hi.
do you have any tools that you can use to budget and stuff like that? Or do you know of any tools that you can use to budget?
Oh, yes, yes. There are a few. Okay. Budget. There are a few. Uh-huh. Why is this thing not canceling on me? Lord of mercy. There are a few. Anybody else? Let me try and change this thing. Sorry. Hello. Floor is yours, guys.
Another
Someone,
question, how can we get persons to invest in our businesses, our small businesses, so they can grow?
yeah, so I did mention to you a model that works. So I think because of the limited time we have, I probably need to work out a scenario or write it up for you as a method that you could use to invest. But on the one hand, investment is really about telling a story. So I will answer the other question about budget tools just now. So let me deal with this topic. An investor wants to understand. So an investor wants to understand. A lot of times you come tell the investor all kind of things, but the investor really wants to understand your numbers and how you get to your numbers. So there is a very defined method that you can use to share your story. What's her name? Latoya, please remind me to share a pitch deck and a pitch deck template.
Okay.
So in essence, I'll tell you at a very high level. When you're talking to, okay, so you have different type of investors. Say you're talking to what we call an angel, to someone who's already an entrepreneur, has generated, success, say like a Baron Foods or someone like that, has the money, but you want to have to sell them your concept, right? So not only do you have to show the numbers, and in this session we weren't able to, but for sure I will get into the business model component. You want to, and I think, let me see if I can skim through this real quickly. You have to show them and tell them a story about your business model. Who you are, what type of business you're in, okay? Who are your clients, your targets, and not just your targets, because if you're already in business, you want to show them exactly which of those target customers are generating the most revenue. So, sometimes people say, oh, I target everybody, but at the end of the day, it's not really true. You might have your business being generated by maybe a small segment of your customer base. It's always like that. 80% of business comes from 20% of your customers. And they might be in a very particular niche area. Whether it is you're targeting elderly women who live in Trumaka, or you're targeting, a particular, say you're targeting maybe younger, maybe people in middle age, they're executive women who don't have the time. They've got the jobs now, they've got the position, but they don't have the time to shop. So you can now customize and do package. Like a friend of mine just launched maybe about 2 months or 3 months ago. What was it? Breadfruit chips in bags. And it's going hot off the shelf. Why? Anybody have the time to be doing roasted breadfruit and so on? They really want it in packages. And not only that, they partnered with another company that does delivery, and now you can get it ordered and delivered to you at your door. So again, these are things we'll talk about in the next session with your business model. And you have to share and try and explain to that customer, to that investor, exactly what your business model. Who is your customer? And this is where the business model comes in very handy. You can very well tell them, okay, these are my customer segments. I reach my customer through this method and that method. I'm probably using Facebook to generate leads, but I'm using Instagram and the Instagram pictures to actually convert those leads, etc. And as a result, because I have a low overhead, I'm able to get X amount of customers. I'm also using WhatsApp as a channel to kind of disseminate. And now WhatsApp has e-commerce, so I'm using it for sales, this, that. So how your customer reaches, you reach your customer, and how your customer communicates with you is what channels is about. Then you can simply tell them very high level, and I have maybe a direct relationship with the customer where I meet with them directly, or we have a farmer's market, and in the farmer's market, I have the opportunity for face-to-face, or I'm using an e-commerce platform, and so my customer relationship is a bit self. They can go online and pick what they want, and they place the order, etc. So you can describe that to them. And then you say, now, this is how I generate revenue. Through customer X. Customer X generates this for me. Customer Y generates this for me. Customer Z generates this for me, right? So cash generated from each customer segment after I deliver value to them. So, and I do it by selling, not only, so when I'm describing my revenue streams, I can say I have diversified revenue streams, not just one. So not only do I sell my products, I have crops, livestock, but I also have a little, agro-processing thing, and maybe I have a little catering business, right? And I also produce certain packages and so on. So I say I've diversified my revenue streams. So when there is a little slow business in one, I'm not totally out of the door because I'm selling this, and this is selling hotcakes, etc. I'm making lip gloss with some of my waste products, so now I'm not wasting anything, and now I have a circular business, and I have certain clients that really like that sustainable aspect of the business. And remember, your nutritional marketing, this is where you can now talk about those different elements. And then you tell them, of course, you're not in business alone. My key partners are X, I get my supplies from this, I have a good relationship with that, I have a contract with so-and-so, and I have a this for that. So if anything happens, I'm covered, and I have a backup plan. Remember when I talk about risk? In this session, you have to be your best risk manager. So the investor likes to hear, not all is hunky-dory, there risk, but this is how you're handling it. So remember the term mitigation, even in business, you have to show how you are going to avoid and address this risk. It's only natural, right? And then these are the most activities that your business is doing to deliver the value, right? And these are and now you now get into things. So because of X, Y, Z, I'm doing these key activities, but I need to get here. And then I'm unable to get here unless I have an investment. So these are some of the key activities I need to do. And these are the key resources I have. And these are the key resources I need to inquire. And these key resources I need investments for. So if I'm asking you for 200,000, this is how I am going to use the money. You see how it flows? It's a story, but it's all about your business model. If you understand your business model, it's very easy for you to tell the story. And then, of course, the customer is saying, okay, so tell me about your costs. Okay, yes, so my costs, remember we're talking about costs. My fixed costs are this and that. I've managed to cut this because I have a deal with the landlord, so I get a discount on this. My variable costs, you know, you have your water, your this and that, and how you manage to keep it down. You're doing this, that, and that. You don't have to be making $1 million, but you have to show the potential. So in a one page, if you understand your business model and understand how to tell the story, and we love to tell stories in the region, it's just about how you tell the story to the investor. So already you can see an investor has an idea of how you create value on the right side and how you manage operations on the back end, which is the left side. And understand too what your risks are and how you manage your risk. And once you can communicate that, then the next step is, all right, let me see your numbers. Man, you talk to him about your revenue streams, you probably shared a little bit about what the costs are, what the units are, etc. So now you want to now go and show that income statement and the balance sheet and say, okay, this is what we're doing, but this is what we're projecting. And that's how your business translates into financials. And not all the story I hear people going to get business plans done. They get a fancy document done, fancy financials done. When you start reading the financials don't make sense to the business because they've gone to some accountant to say, let me just whip something up and just guess for you. But you're the one running the business. You need to put that input in first so that when you're talking to an investor, you're talking your numbers because you know your numbers. And a lot of times we don't know our numbers, so we're not going to get close to that. And that's it from an investment standpoint. Remember, getting a loan from a bank is a different process, different procedure. They just want to know if you can afford it, if you have collateral, et cetera, et cetera. They might not necessarily even fully understand your business plan. So it's two different processes. Does that answer your question? Ladies? Okay.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Okay, fine. Okay, Patrice Belingi said information well presented. However, I really love to know more about the specific investment opportunity. Oh, you want me to go back into investment opportunities? Okay. Well, we could share that in the next session. Our next session, I'll talk about also, I'm going to be in Barbados, so I will be presenting a lot closer to home. Wish I could pop over, but alas, not the case. But I'll be talking about disaster and risk finance, and even talking about parametric insurance and how we can frame that. So I will share a little bit of that along with, you know, how do we protect ourselves, risk protection. So I think it's 8:30 now. We've gone way over time. And I don't want to keep back those others who have, you know, other commitments. So can I have some quick feedback on, did we touch on enough? I know I owe a full documented model for the revenue-based finance and how you can now use that, because say you've done your presentation and now it comes to contracting, this is where that model will come in highly to say, okay, rather than you give me a loan, you can have the option of a loan with a investor directly. But you know, in business, especially when you're dealing with cash flow, it could be different. So I will share the information on the revenue-based model and how that model, a sample, how you can model it, as well as the other option with the cash flow instead of the revenue, gross or net, called the demand dividend, and how you can structure it, even in an investment opportunity. So locally, you know, people, you talk to them and say, okay, listen, I just need a little thing. And once you walk them through your numbers and whatever, and now you're structuring exactly the terms, this is where the terms will come in handy for contracting. And I'm telling you, for agriculture, I don't know why we can't use the revenue-based model at all. And I don't know why we're not combining things like SUSU with that, because you know SUSU helps you build that portfolio, that lump that you need to now put in. Questions, concerns, reactions?
I think everyone is tired.
I think so too. Maybe form a cooperative, yes. But there are other models other than cooperative that are more like the fund or like almost like a REIT structure that are a little more transparent, that people don't have to get into the partnership is the leadership drama where it's purely transactional and nobody fighting anybody. So we have to we have to look at these evolving models to see how we can customize it to our context.
I know I've said a bit tonight, but it's not really a question, just a comment and observation. I remember last week, well, actually not last week, Tuesday, my mind is a little foggy. You were talking about, you know, those grants and the greenpreneur, I think, and stuff like that, like the grants that are available. And I was reading a little earlier this evening that there's actually a Vincent business that just got one of those grants this month. Yeah, 10,000 US, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have some for 50,000 and so on. It's like you got to put yourself into that. And when you talk about record keeping, it's trying to find ways of managing records. Now, for the person that asked me about the record keeping and tools, I do have, I had curated the list a long time ago. Was it last year, earlier this year? And I had presented it for women in green entrepreneurship. And I had like many different digital tools. So they have a few tools that you can use for your financial management. Balance Pro, if you look at balancepro.com, is another one. And there's one I saw, something receipts. I think it only costs $12, but it's artificial intelligence in there with your receipts. So you can, you know, like when you're doing your shopping and so on and you're spending, you want to track your spending, you just do a screenshot with your phone, because most of us have phones now, and it's able to then put everything into a record. So these are things that you can use. And even these days, you can do invoicing from your phone. So everything is all connected. So Balance Pro is one. It's like a digital checkbook, and I think they have a free version. So you might want to look into that. What is it? Client booking was another one. Yes, I have another one with purely financial tools, but this Balance Pro came to mind, and I'll remember the link, share the link immediately after we finish the call. I'll give Latoya the link for the other one. I know that they have like some special going on. So there's a site that have a special that can give you a lifetime deal for like $12. So I'm not promoting it, but it is a site. It's called AppSumo. You can get quite a number of deals from time to time. So sometimes I get some financial tools for really dirt cheap. And then you have a lot of them actually for free. Like if you can't afford this accounting software, QuickBooks, you can use Wave Apps, which is 100% totally free, no cost. So, I mean, technology has come down to the point where we have no excuse, you know, to build our records. We have no excuse. So I would look for the other slides I have for all these financial tools, and then we shall put it all in one and provide that for you. But for sure, after this call, I'll look for that link so that Latoya can put it in the group really quick. So you could see, check it out, and I'll send you the site where they have the special going on for $12 in case. But you know how it is, they try before you buy kind of thing. You can always sign up. It's free. And if you like it, you pay for it, you know, so there's no pressure, really. Does that answer or help answer that question? So wow, I think it's time. Really, we're getting into 9 p.m. I don't want Keithlin to kill me. So let's reserve our energies for the next class. But I do want you to do that homework, please. Prepare, look at the manual, look for the personal financial statement, and I want you to attempt to fill it out. And then when we reconvene on Tuesday, we'll look at the personal financial statement, and as the request, we start looking at how we can now start translating these sheets, these topics, into actual spreadsheets. And I do have a business model canvas that actually has some financials in it. So it can even help you break down your financials before you now start breaking it into a profit and loss sheet. Does this help? Okay. So if there's nothing more, I want to thank each and every one of you. I hope this session was unique and, most important, valuable for all of you. And I just hope something you could take away, even if it's 10, 20% to apply it in something you do today or tomorrow. I encourage you to do so. Okay. So next session, we'll do a little bit more on since I have covered business model, I'll just do the video. We'll work through some of the numbers. So we are totally understanding what we call the unit economics of our business before we now go into looking at the broad terms and then looking at the spreadsheets.